Oh, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks. How are you doing?
Okay. So you're new. Uh, we just talked in the Slack this past week. So I'm
Yes.
gonna probably wait maybe a couple minutes and ask you to introduce yourself.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a chance to take a look at your materials. They look very good. So
Thank you.
looking forward to seeing what you want to do, and we'll talk about that when Jesse gets here. So okay, well. Uh, So, welcome to the meeting. So, just to let Madhuri know, we record these meetings on YouTube, and for people who can't make the meeting, and people watch it offline. So, welcome to the meeting, and we'll have people joining us here in a little bit. And I wanted to start off a little bit with some. I don't think I have any announcements right now. We've been advertising on LinkedIn and some other places for people to join the lab. We have a number of different positions that Jesse is very diligently put out and finished up the descriptions on. So thank you, Jesse, for that. Oh, there's Krishna. Hello, Krishna.
Hello.
And hello, Angela. And hello, Jesse. Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
All right. And how are you, Krishna? I haven't seen you in a while.
Hi. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Good.
Just a little busy with some personal stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
So, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well. Doing well.
So, Jesse is here?
Yeah, he's right there. I don't know if he's ready to.
Hey.
There we go.
Yeah, I'll check the camera in a moment.
Okay.
Hello, welcome everybody. Good to see everyone here.
Yeah. I was just thanking Jesse for his work on putting out the ads for our lab people, new lab people. Getting the word out.
Can you put a little bit more description in the ad? Please, I know a few people, but they needed more detail. Either it is going to be paid or unpaid regarding that. I know a few good people. They both are PhD candidates, and they have good domain knowledge, which is good for the lab. So they needed more information. I guess they have. How many applications we have received?
Yes, there's different postings, so I'm not quite sure which. There was one major LinkedIn posting, but there's a number of postings that are actually listed on the website's job page. So I've been putting. I wasn't quite sure about some of the details for some of those things, so I kind of left. The main posting, I think, is something. The main posting that was on LinkedIn I closed. I'll put it that way because we had a number of people respond to that, and also we can only do one free posting on LinkedIn at a time. So,
if you want, I can do the posting. I have LinkedIn Premium.
Yeah, and that's something that.
Yeah, if you need any help.
Yeah, that's something that we'll probably discuss more this meeting.
Yeah, probably later on we'll go through a lot of the stuff that we have. So where we are on this. So, Angela, how are you?
I'm okay. I was working on the data trace slides earlier, so
Okay.
Those are about halfway done.
Yeah, I took a look. It looks pretty good. I'll have to go back over it again. Maybe next week we can go through in the meeting and look at them. Would that be okay?
I think they'll be done by then. I'm pretty sure anyway.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll do that. So Madhuri is our new person that joined us this week in the Slack, and she hasn't posted anything yet, but we'll go through the Slack and get a feel for it and everything. But I'd like her to introduce herself to the group, so if you could.
Hi everyone, I'm Madhuri, and I graduated with a master's degree in molecular biology and genetics last year. And so for my master's project, I worked on stress granules, which are basically biomolecular condensates in cells. They are formed when cells experience stress. And I used Drosophila cell cultures to work on them. So they've been implicated in neurodegenerative disorders like ALS, and other motor neuron disorders. And after that, I briefly worked on pathways for pain, in essentially pathways for sensation to action. And that was a brief stint, the beginning of this year, and ever since I've been into writing for a bit, and excited to be here.
Well, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and welcome. And you want to say something, Jesse?
Oh no, just welcome aboard. I know we've interacted on Twitter and stuff. So thank you for going through the process. And this is the first time the lab's putting out certain descriptions like this, so we're figuring out things as we go. But thank you for coming us through that process. And really that person, and so it's great to have you.
Yeah, no problem.
So good. That sounds good. So why don't we get started with our first part, which is our first order of business, which is the Slack reviews. We do this every week, and we kind of go through what's been in the Slack and maybe discuss some things. So let me share my screen here. All right. So you can see my screen. Okay. So the first channel here, we have some channels: bioevolution and brain organoids. These are sort of more biologically oriented channels. Madhuri might be interested in joining some of these. We have some, they get posted to off and on, but we still have some things in here that get discussed. You can join in on some conversations there. Cognition Futures probably has some things from this week. So this week we had this conference that Jesse and I attended, and this was on the BICA, which is the Biologically Inspired Cognitive Architectures. And it was a very good session. It wasn't it wasn't something that was promoted very much, but there were a lot of interesting talks there. So
yeah, it's funny because this is another there's a very it's not unusual, but it's almost sort of the rule actually after my time in the lab, because there are some really, really good events. I think Beak itself actually was a workshop within the conference of the conference itself was the International Society of Information Science or something, ISIS or something like that. IS4SI.
Yeah.
And so there was this workshop within it, which I think was a whole day or a majority of a day at the conference. Is that how it worked? Because there was honestly the schedule was hard for me to even understand after I looked at it.
Yeah, they did. So. I think they made some mistakes on the schedule, but they had there was they had the sessions Tuesday and then or Monday, and then they had the Tuesday some workshop that was not in the same grouping, and then Wednesday they had some more, and then they had some other sessions. I guess it was like the whole conference was sort of like a set of sub-conferences, is the best way to put it. So, but it was good. I think definitely there was a lot there that and so we have the shared notes document. This is something we do for big conferences and big workshops. So we put this together. This is something Jesse and I have been working on over, the past year and a half. And it's not greatly organized, but it's basically we'll take like screenshots or put notes in and just put them in this file. And it's kind of organized as a brain dump in some ways because you just have stuff in here. We could go back and organize it. But it's just like a series of talks. They're roughly in chronological order. They had some really interesting talks. Like they had this stuff on development. There was a talk. Yeah, so there was what was this group? This was the Subthought Corporation. This is Michael Miller, who's not up here, but like he was giving the talk, and they talked about. So this was kind of like a combination of what we're doing with. Allostasis machines and developmental AI. It's very much in those two veins. So their argument was equilibration, which is something out of like homeostasis and homeoresis. So homeostasis is like keeping the system in a certain state. Homeoresis is sort of like another way to say allostasis, which is to move between states. So they have this equilibration idea that they worked out. Then they talk about the Piagetian modeler, which is where they have this theory of human development. They're drawing from cognitive development here, so they're drawing from Piaget's theories, some neo-Piagetian theories, theory-based knowledge, and so forth. And so, they kind of presented this, and then I think they're actually building a robot with this in it. So, people have done this kind of developmental stuff. Off and on. There have been groups that have done work on this, so it's not like this is something that we're just kind of hitting on, alone. But it's not. First of all, it's not a dominant view in the field, and secondly, it's there's a lot of room to kind of figure out how these things work. So I think this was a really good contribution to this area. So equilibration here, for example, is where you have this, they kind of link it to development, but it's also about sort of developmental homeostasis and developmental homeoresis. So the central process in human development is the construction of an accurate mental model of the world, built by continually detecting disturbances and contradictions, and then regulating and compensating them to achieve coherence. So they have these books here, that they draw from, but this is their model of AI. And okay, so Jesse put the day on here, Wednesday. So this is, and then there was a lot of philosophy as well at this conference. So it was like cognition. It was like cognitive modeling. You had some robotics. You had some modeling of general artificial intelligence. You had like philosophy.
There was a surprise. What I was saying earlier about their like kind of the norm is that it's almost more usual than not that some of the bigger conferences that aren't very well publicized or detailed in their publication or like advertised for how they're doing it. Like there was. When I first heard about the bike workshop, I actually heard about it through one of my friends, I think.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, we talked about it in the lab. And my friend was also there. Dan Elton was there. We were in a couple sessions together. But there was a lot of really good stuff to mine. I'm really thankful that I didn't have a lot of free time this week, so I'm glad that Bradley could kind of put some notes in there, or at least just get enough. Just for people who are not familiar with this, like this isn't supposed to be an exhaustive thing. It's more just like a really quick set of notes that we can come back and look at later about things. Like I've also been using like Otter.ai a lot more for these conferences, just to kind of go back and look at stuff and find some of the words they were using and the concepts, because it's especially for a lot of the new proposing of different models or ways of doing things. It's nice to kind of get a sense of where things are going. And I was surprised. I was very surprised at all the different stuff that excuse me, has come up in the conference. I think this talk, the Schneider talk, one of the most interesting things about I would mention about the Schneider talk is that I may reach out to him myself, because he basically said he's open to forming a working group on. He wants to have a category system to kind of explain different, as he says, levels of intelligence, which I'm not particularly beholden to using that way of classifying stuff the way that he's doing it, but I feel like giving I'm interested in I'm actually particularly interested in sort of like levels of cognitive capacity, which I don't think is the same thing as intelligence, or like degrees thereof, or like what affects different sort of like major junctures or bridging points, or bridging off forks in the road points about that. So I mean, there were a few people that came up in the discussion who were interested in it as well, like Ricardo. I think I put Ricardo's link below that. Is that true?
Yeah, this one here. Okay.
Yeah, open that quickly, just for a second. 'Cause I think he's in
Brazil. Yeah.
Okay. I like the way it says World Wide Web homepage.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I don't have any more to say about Ricardo, but like Ricardo was interested in that, and I'd be curious what Schneider decides to do with his grouping, because there was interesting, a lot of times people with their new ideas will, in a few other presentations the same day, like if you can go back to the notes document,
Yeah.
Schneider was like trying to kind of say, oh, why don't we just use my model to explain where this is happening in a diagram, explain what's this happening like along the continuum of development of that. It's like, sometimes you want to make your model more applicable than it can be at times, but that's part of the excitement of it, and trying to sort things out. So that was pretty much. I don't know if I put anything. Did you put anything after this one or the Mark Wasser one?
Not too much. Well, no, actually, I did put some notes, like some screenshots from some talks that I. So this is the existential risk assessment, and I just kind of took screenshots where I thought was kind of an interesting slide.
Yeah,
I have yet to put a few notes in. I need to put in, but I'll do that later.
Oh yeah. I haven't put any many handnotes. The Mark Wasser one was interesting because he's sort of antagonistic. If you scroll back up to his stuff, he was sort of antagonistic to
which one is this?
the after Schneider.
Oh.
Immediately after Schneider. So there, up a little bit more.
That's not it.
Yeah, there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or yeah.
Mark
I guess it's not a lot of good things there, but Mark's interesting because he kind of was heavily critiquing a lot of. He's sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of being concerned about the subject of how do we. He's sort of the opposite. There was a view earlier. I don't know if Bradley was there for it and might be able to remember better than I was, but I even think in one of the panels, there was Roman Poliski, who's a very big name in AI security, and a lot of like parts of like AI safety, and that's a particular field. And there was a kind of they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum of like, we can't really try to regulate ethics for AI, and if so, we would have to do it in a very specific way of, you know, either really, really computationally done or not. And I think Roman's point was like, we can't come to a consensus, so we can't really figure out a way to implement that in like in an engineering sense. Whereas Mark's sort of on the other end of the spectrum, and kind of, I'm not particularly partisan myself yet on either of these, but it's interesting to see Mark kind of was talking about his view in that he was kind of dissing the computational scientists who were saying, oh, they don't really know anything, like how to functionally implement morality, and he's apparently like more of a social scientist. So it's kind of funny to see an outspoken social scientist at a conference like this saying, "Oh, I know how to deal with morality."
Yeah.
So it was he, you know, he has this views of like, we have to have a particular social environment basically, or something like that. And I won't even try to really articulate them here, but it's just, I'll just note Mark Wasser as sort of an interesting counterpoint to a lot of the heavily I think he's one of the main people of the biker workshop or this event.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to kind of see him to kind of like place to shine relative to a lot of people who probably don't totally gel with what he's doing. So that's all I'll say about that.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, these are the talks that we had. So, a lot of different things, from like programming examples to different. Well, a lot of it was sort of visionary in scope, and like, you know, our talk, of course, was this. I don't know if our talk is in this channel, but I'll bring it up in a bit here.
No, it's not in this.
Yeah, I gotta go down to the bottom here. All right. So yeah, we had this. So this was this one here. I guess back to Saturday. Okay, so this was a video. I think the Adam Saffron video we talked about last week. Then there was this thing on efficient representation, learning and planning through abstraction. There's a paper.
This is part of the. This was a lecture from the Center for Brain, Minds, and Machines summer course at MIT. I actually was there last year, but this, I think, was from this current year. And it was very, very. I didn't get to fully go into that yet, but it was quite cool. The next link below, you don't have to open that, but it's a link to a lab in, I think it's Spain or Europe.
Oh, the knowledge, representation, and reasoning.
ECBL EDU.
Oh, this one here. Okay. Yeah.
But that's a lot just to follow up on there. I think that's it.
Oh, and this was apparently some sort of knowledge map that you had pointed to. This one, I don't know which one it was, but.
Oh yeah, both of those links were basically notes, just links to follow up on knowledge representation and reasoning. One's just a wiki page, and one's like a. I think the bottom link is like a collection of resources basically about it. So. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So definitely check these out if you're interested. And so that's Cognition Futures. I don't think there's anything in cybernetics for this week. We have anything in data science, nothing in developmental AI. And I think we don't have anything. There is something here actually. So this was the Brains Through Time. This is a natural history of vertebrates. This is something that looks really interesting. This is George Streeter and Glenn Northcutt, who are two big names in brain evolution, actually. So this is George Streeter wrote a book about 15 years ago early definitive book on brain phylogenies and how the brains of basically mammals, but also some insects, how those things evolved in evolution. How you get different types of brains, how you get tissue innervation and how plasticity works. So there's a lot of, it was from a phylogenetic perspective. So we've talked about phylogenies in this group where you have a common ancestor and you have, derived features from that common ancestor. So, you don't want to necessarily say that something is simple or primitive or, advanced. You want to say things are either conserved or derived. So it's like, the common ancestor has the conserved feature of this thing. So it could be just like some basic light sensor. And then the derived forms are the different types of eye that evolve from that light sensor. So, it's like if you have a simple, just the ability to transduce light, that will be derived into a number of different types of eye. And so that's the kind of like the thinking the sort of shift in thinking you have to make to think about brain evolution. Now this one, and Glenn Northcutt is I think more of a neuroanatomist, but still has done a lot of work on like bird brains and other types of brains. So they have this reading group. They have a new book. I don't remember what the name of it is, but they have this reading group that people might want to join. I don't know what their scheduling is on it, but it starts at the 6th of October. So this is something that's in, I think, Europe. So they'll do it like in the time's convenient to Europe. If you're not in Europe, it might be at an odd time for you. And then there's this, it's going to be on Crowdcast, which of course is the thing that they use to broadcast different events, including Neuromatch, or at least they used to broadcast Neuromatch on Crowdcast. And so this is, if you're interested in brain evolution, this is a nice thing to maybe check into a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be checking it out and may have a little bit of a group activity around that. Or like, I don't know if it kind of crosses a lot of things here, but also just other people. Like I don't know if Johan's going to be there or not per se. But like I think the first meeting they're going to have one of the authors or something like that there too. And it'll be kind of a nice tour to go through the history of I guess brain development. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think it definitely follows up on some of the things we've been talking about with, respect to some of the papers and agent based modeling we've been talking about in the last several meetings, probably going back to this summer. So then there's Ethics, Society, and Tech, I think, and this is Whatify, which is with Whatify, anyone can get actionable predictions in minutes. So this is
I think it was Mark Wasser's talk.
Oh, okay.
And he was, I think this is one of his things, but like one of him or someone doing a similar talk on like ethics and governance and morality was about like how do we not automate decision making, but how do we have advances in technology that will help us come to more efficient ways of reaching not necessarily consensus but conclusions in a way. It was the app itself is sort of a way to curate and aggregate discussion, maybe is a good way to say it. And he was trying to describe how this could affect some future governance related stuff. I don't have a lot to say about it, but that's why it's there. Is that
okay? And yeah, there was something up here too.
And that was just a link to follow up on about what an update on some European efforts in AI and governance. So
okay, yeah. If I don't know if you wanted to make a longer update on ethics, society, and tech, but Do you have anything to talk about?
Overall, not a whole lot, but I have made on the just to kind of maybe I'll really quickly share my screen.
Alright.
Just to like show this. This is this for those who haven't seen it before. This is kind of our. I'm calling it a research site map, but it's a little bit. It's sort of like a administrative hub for the lab or whatever. There's a lot of our project links are over here, as you can probably tell. And I'm trying to. If you pay attention, like you look on the bottom left, you can see like this is a Weebly site. This is Weebly. This is a Notion site. This is a GitHub site. This is on GitHub, and now move on to the lab's jurisdictions. This is back to a Weebly site. This is the other site. So like if you there's a lot of like I'm trying to put them all in one place because it's been for bringing new people in the lab and people who aren't quite familiar with the history and the breadth and depth of what we've been doing here. There's a lot of stuff that I'm putting over here. And also, like our current members and alumni getting involved, and so on and so forth. And this isn't quite finished yet, but it's getting there. But what I will say now is the get involved page is sort of this is actually where our jobs are mainly going to be listed or openings. They're not really jobs, or internships or assistantships or whatever. Yeah, and so thanks to as far as the society ethics, I have finished. You can kind of tell if they have like these things are still blank, but mostly they're done. Also, the model builder, which actually should probably put up next on LinkedIn because that's going to be the most like involved one. But like for society ethics tech, we have the general internship. That I fleshed out a little bit here, and this is kind of, for those who aren't really aware of what I'm doing. The general internships are basically anything in the, it's just a very large banner of like, hey, you want to work on this team or on this project? Here's what we're doing. They're very broad and they're not really specific. They're kind of just giving you, hey, here's what's going on. If you have a project you want to do in this context or work with us in this general team, you're welcome to do so. And then, like for this example or for this one, like this is this very specific thing, and I don't know, like for this one or like for example the AI historian, these are really really specific internships or like very specific thing to focus on. And I don't really expect there to be a lot of interest in the really detailed ones, but there are very specific things that would be great if someone wanted to work on them. All the requirements and responsibilities are basically the same. There's a little variation about them that's specific to them, but it's like be into research, have some experience, ideally. The lab itself, especially for these type of things, is not. We're interested in developing people. We don't expect people to have like, the majority of our lab doesn't exactly have a PhD, but there are people who are in the process of furthering themselves and growing, and that's just fine. That's how I came to the lab too. But yeah, this the only other one for society ethics tech. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to name this group. But is it ethics in big tech research or internship? And this is kind of what a lot of our most recent talk at the ACM's New York Celebration of Women in Computing event was actually inspired, and we spent kind of a third of our time on this topic in particular, because there's so many different things that are coming out with like Google and Facebook, whatever. And it's having this one's almost more like almost a bit like an investigative reporter, or someone who wants to go in and find some of the details and differentiate, ideally, I don't know if someone's going to actually do this, but like this role will be like, all right, find out what sort of the political news aspect of it, the technical aspect of it, and the different narratives between, like, in the case of Timna Jabru, and then I forgot the name of the guy on Google's side, but like what were they actually saying, and what has happened? Like there are some specific papers that were produced at a conference that were led to some ire and some feedback, blowback, and people were saying, oh well, you resigned, you didn't. So I was like, this is a bit more of a very atypical. The ethics and big tech one and the AI turn are kind of like my least. I don't think I'm going to have a tremendous amount of interest in those things because they're quite specific. But just I want to put them there because in case if anybody's looking for a specific project or someone who happens to be totally fascinated with either of those things, hey, there's a place for you here in the lab if you want to work on that, and like those will be related to ways you can contribute to ongoing projects and publications and cool stuff too. So keep updated for this particular thing, and to make it simple, I just put it's our oral GitHub page and join. And the link will always be here, but the Notion links kind of aren't very good, so I'm kind of using this as a buffer. But like this is going to be our actual like jobs board kind of a thing, and these will change over time. And this is a bit of an experiment, but I've had a lot of really good feedback so far. I've had a lot of people reach out about different things, some on Twitter, some on LinkedIn, So I don't know all the different components that I don't know how many people reach out to Bradley yet directly, but I'm trying to say, well, the next step is to talk to Bradley about it. So yeah.
So yeah, I've gotten a couple of emails, but yeah, I think can we come back to this after the end of the Slack review? I want it for like a more sort of administrative pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions about that or any comments?
Let's see.
Okay. I'm gonna the shared notes doc. I'm going to make it. I'm gonna put that in the chat. This is for.
Hi, Bradley.
Hi. How are you?
Hi. Great. Actually, I want to present something. So, like, shall I wait for the end or?
Well, what was the topic?
Pardon?
What was the topic you wanted to present on?
Okay, I wanted to present deep fake detection.
Yeah, we could do it now. Sure. It's kind of like going into the ethics and tech area. So, why don't you share your screen? We'll do that.
Yes.
So the shared notes document I put in the chat was for the thing I showed you before about the conference, the BICA conference. So.
Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, you can see your screen.
Hello everyone. So I'll be presenting now deep fake detection. I'll try to make it short.
Your microphone is really low. I can't really hear.
Okay. Give me like 1 minute.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are deep fakes? You people, these are the videos that are created by using deep learning technologies. So you must have like used the Face app. It's an app that swaps your face with like any movie celebrity or something. And you how many you must have like seen this video. And there was a famous Barack Obama videos where he was saying something, but actually it was synthetically generated. So like here, what you can do that you can swap your face with any person, and you can literally make anything out of it. You can gauge bars, like when a word leader can give any provocative speak, and like deep fakes can be like used in very malicious way, and there is a very upcoming trend of deep fake pornography, and it's like very dangerous, and it's like threat to women's safety around. And like things like this are like very hard to trace because you can't really tell that which image is real, which one here is Tom Cruise and which one is the other person. So it is like virtually next to impossible to predict a deep movie or an image. Like it's very hard to do that. But there are certain things that when observed can help you to distinguish between them. It was also it was like one of the first video of Barack Obama, and it featured him giving a speech which was not actually given by him; it was synthetically generated. So things to keep in mind, like pay attention to the face. High-end deepfakes manipulations are always facial transformations, and pay attention to the cheeks and forehead. Does the skin appear too smooth or too wrinkly? Is the ageness of the skin similar to the ageness of hair and eyes? So there are chances when the cheeks may have wrinkles, but the hair are black, or the hair are white, but the cheeks appear to be of a young person. And other thing like pay attention to the blinking. Is the like blinking is one of the key factor to hair in case of video. Is the blinking too much or too less? And there are like certain other things like the color and shape of the lips, and does it like corresponds to the real person, or it looks a little bit odd. And there is a new thing. It is AMP10. It's adaptive manipulation traces extraction networks. With the prophylactic face image manipulation techniques such as face-to-face and deepfakes, more face images are spreading over the internet, which brings a serious challenge to public confidence. Face image forgery and AMP10 serves as a pre-processing to suppress image content and highlight manipulation traces. So what it does that it it like inspects the CNN layers and looks for like is there a trace of back propagation there? Like were these CNNs like altered? So it's just like it has recently started out and it had to go a long way. So this is like the architecture of the engine, and here are the references. So
Okay.
that's all.
We can go back to the architecture, actually.
Sure.
So this AM10 architecture. So this is exploiting an adaptive convolution layer to predict manipulation traces in the image. So could you walk us through this a little bit?
Sure. So okay, first of all, it was trained on on a variety of synthetic data, and when it comes when it inspects the CNN layers of like the given image, it like traces for the back propagation. Like, were there any changes? Are the weights adjusted here? Because in back propagation we adjust the weight. So it looks for like does these layers were altered sometime, and it how do I say, like it compares it with the synthetic data that was given it to train on, and it like finds a kind of a correlation or a similarity between new image and its training data. So are the layers are the change of weight and the traces are given are like similar to the synthetic data that it was trained on, or it's like it doesn't contain any traces. So here the architecture just look for traces of dated weights in the CNN case.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. So yeah, this is we talked about synthetic data last week at the meeting, one of the papers, and this was in the context of creating like three-dimensional like worlds So you'd take like some sort of like a car, and you would take the three-dimensional, you would take like, you couldn't necessarily get a whole scan of a car into a computer, but you can take like the two-dimensional image and then generate some plausible synthetic data to give it a third dimension. And so then you can build a car and you can compare it with a real car and see what it looks like. That was kind of a silly example, but you could use this in a number of domains where you don't know what the third dimension is, or what you don't know what the full data is. You have some data, but you want to fill in the gaps. And so in biology, actually, this is something that we would do.
It's now used in construction and furniture. Like they, how do I say that? They put up the furniture in your room with AR, and you can see how your room would look like.
Yeah. It's
just with images. You have to click the image. It will assume the height and put it in AR, so you can see how your room would look like. But like these deep fakes are like potential of a lot of evil. Literally, wars can happen. You just have to riots, wars. Very productive videos are like could be made out of it, and there is like pornography generated, which is a great threat to women's safety. You just need a picture, and you can do all sort of bad things, and there is not a lot of like there is like not a program which can tell you that is it a manipulated mod video or not, and that's like a big bit. Maybe in future there is techniques that could help with it. Now it's very hard to tell the difference.
Does anyone else have any comments on that? I think that's an interesting topic. So you're working in a... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, thanks for presenting, Krishna. I'm glad to... we would have presentations like that more in the past, and I haven't done any lately myself. So it's great to see you do that again. I don't know if Angela or anyone else, Madhuri, were there any other presentations that were going to happen? People wanted to present today, just because we didn't. I think we just sort of went forward without the expectation that people weren't going to present anything, which is we usually check in and we haven't done it in a while. So, does anybody else want to present anything later today, or? I don't think so, but just figured I'd ask. But thanks, Krishna. That was good, and hope to have this can. Especially on this front, I think there'll be a lot more things looking at some of the specific technical stuff, even in the realm of like AI ethics and a lot of the bias and the things that are coming there. There's always a lot that's evolving in that space. So it's good to have little regular updates about, hey, check this out. There actually was something. It's a bit dated at this time, but at my university, my former university, there was a really big. They were one of the major research pushes they did, and really widely recognized, was in deepfake detection. And I think this was, I don't know if it's quite the same as what Krishna presented today, but if there's particular interest in that, I could look back into what they were doing, because there was a lot of groundbreaking stuff at the time. It's a few years dated now. But it's a very interesting topic, so yeah. Thank you.
So are you preparing to do like a paper on this, or like what is the next step in this, or is this just like something you're interested in?
Maybe a paper, and maybe we can present this work in the coming conferences.
This would all be like, it would be nice to have like this is a bit of we haven't really talked about this much yet. So there's like the data tech privacy workshop on conference thing we're considering. So it might be nice to have like almost like a buffet or a section of like
Yeah.
Here's a bunch of technologies or things people are doing to combat the problems that present. So like, here's a set of problems. Here's what's going wrong. Here's a way we're dealing with it. And like, this could be something that fits into the category. Like, here's how we're trying to combat deepfake stuff. So.
Yeah. It's like a whistleblower. Like in 1930s, when scientists were working on plastic, when they discovered like non-degradable plastic, they were happy, and I read a newspaper article from that area, and they were reporting it as a groundbreaking discovery. But now we can see the menace of plastic. So the same is with deep learning. You once make something and you assume it could be like do something good, but in long run it may have different consequences. Because people were working on GANs, they were very happy, like, oh, we are doing some groundbreaking research. But what happens in the long run may be, maybe very different from what we have expected it to be.
Yeah. And there's two things that makes me think of. One is for those who have seen the original Jurassic Park, the famous like Ian Malcolm remark, whether we should and stuff like that. And then also one of my friends from Princeton Envision, well, acquaintance from Envision, they had a really good tweet, and I won't. We can move on after this. But like they basically said how, in very strong parallel to what Krishna just said, that they're into AI ethics and they've done some things. They're really smart, very very brilliant person in like math and in machine learning and things like that. But they're also quite. I like their take on ethics in a lot of ways, but they had a pretty like a hot take tweet, which is basically saying modern day AI ethics in a corporate sense is much akin to how like the tobacco industry was saying cigarettes are fine, or the big oil companies were saying they're doing all the climate change research in the past. It's like, oh, hey, we don't have to worry about it. Don't worry, like the public face and the presentation was, hey, we're doing just fine. In reality, like, things aren't going well. So I think that fits with even with what I said before about like why I have that position. It would be great if someone to find people who just want to look specifically at what's sort of the news and what's coming out from this sort of point of interface, because that's going to affect pretty much all of our careers for the rest of our lives in some ways. So anyway, we can move on. I'm going to finish the Slack review, but that was a good talk.
Yeah, well, thank you, Krishna, and thank you, Jesse, for the presentation and updates. So that was the Ethics Society in Tech, and we haven't had an update on that in a while, so that's good. We spent some time on that. Let's see, what else do we have? General channel. This is our talk in the general channel that we gave at BICA. This was the Gibsonian information talk. So if you missed it, or if you don't know what it is, this is about 15 minutes. It'll go over a lot of the main concepts. It's a very good talk, I think, for an introduction to it. We're going to work on a preprint, and that's going to be coming out soon. We have a paper on it already. I just need to add some of the things that we talked about in the talk, like some of the mathematical formalism and a little bit more on some of the issues, drawing those out a little bit more. But we'll get that out soon. And then, we'll have this talk and the preprint, and then we can, I don't know what the next step is there. Maybe publish a preprint or do another talks, maybe at Neuromatch 4, which we'll talk about later.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's good. We have that. So, we start building materials like this, right? We have a talk, we have a preprint, we have another talk at another conference. It's slightly different. And we just keep building like that until, we get it. That's how you build research theme. So just so everyone knows, that's what we're doing there. This is more stuff on the BICA meeting. And, okay, so that's general. Information theory, I think I put some things in from the... Okay, so this is where some of this BICA stuff ended up. This is the Ben Gertzel talk here. Just a moment. Okay, thank you. So this is the Ben Goertzel talk. This was on the, he's a AI researcher, OpenCog. A shared notes document is here, another link in this channel that I put in. That's the document I put in the chat. This is this, I don't know what this is.
This is pretty much what we already covered, really. This is what the philosophy. This is I tagged Charlotte here, who's Charlotte's a colleague or sort of external collaborator is like the formal word, I guess, at UCL in London, and I tagged her because she's deep in philosophy. But this guy was basically saying one of his hot take, JC's hot take.
Yeah.
Reese Anthus was basically, hey, let's not put any time into fussing about which architectures to use, which is quite interesting. I don't know if I captured it totally here. This might not be the best slide for it, but basically he's very much saying a lot of stuff we shouldn't focus on, but we should focus on this stuff. And I feel like it would be very. I think Charlotte would disagree with him a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm she's actually just started her own research position in a new lab. So I haven't had a lot of chance to talk to her about this. I have been in contact with her, but not. I didn't get to have a full update on this talk. So to be continued on that, but everything else in the Slack channel, I think we already covered. So
yeah. So this is interesting. We talked about eliminativism in the context of like representations and some of the things going on in AI. So, there's this argument that like you can have like a, like a deep learning architecture with no sort of representation. You just put data in and you get an answer out. And then, it's not quite that simple, but like you basically don't need to worry about, any of the sort of the representations internally. As opposed to people argue, well, you need a like Gary Marcus, you need a representation, you need to worry about that. And so that's...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I kind of think of, I don't have an easy axis, an easy diagram for this, but it's kind of easy to think of, for those who are here in the past, but like the Richard Sutton versus sort of Gary Marcus are sort of on this side of the debate. Like Richard Sutton's like, don't put any, he's very anti-representation or even like symbols, just focused on computation and not even like purely focused on like his thing, the what was it, the bitter lesson was that like don't waste any of your time focusing on specifying specific like putting any kind of, as he said, like human specified tailored things into your computational learning stuff, whereas Gary is basically saying, hey, in order to get higher level stuff, we're going to have some actual symbols and representation and these like structures somewhere. And so I feel like he's probably more on the Richard Sutton side of things of that debate.
Yeah, I think so. And so that's interesting. So I put some notes on this in the shared doc. And I thought that was interesting. We should follow up on that sort of thing. So, and then, so these are just notes on the conference here. We talked about this. There's a new channel, Math. This is something Jesse started. This is a video on incompleteness, which is...
this, I didn't even get through it all the way, but it's really, really cool because I had to pause it. But I really like, it's funny because Aaron totally unintentionally or unrelated mentioned to me Veritasium, the YouTube channel, was a lot of math and conceptual stuff. But it was really quite cool because it's a really nice tie-in to a lot of the foundation of information theory and a lot of like Norbert Wiener's work. Norbert Wiener was very who's related to cybernetics and a lot of the stuff about incompleteness and dealing with incompleteness, because the first half of the video is kind of all these ideas about how to have it's kind of a debate. It's centered on set theory, but it was a kind of an introduction to set theory and how, like, early on set theory was viewed this way, and there was like the formalists and the, I forget which, but there's a big debate about just how do sets work, and can there be sets that are, what are the details of set theory in this way or that way. And then they got into basically, I think it was, Gödel and like Gödel numbers, and how he came up with a way to designate what the numbers were, and using some symbols and some ways of representing classes of numbers and systems. And as I haven't finished this, I don't know what the conclusion is, but like midway through the blockbuster movie of Incompleteness, it's really interesting, and I'm a big fan of, like, trajectories and the blends of development, like, knowing the plot and the narrative of stuff is pretty cool. So I wanted to make this channel. I feel like we've had math channels before, but I couldn't find any, so I made kind of a new one here. But if you find cool stuff or relevant things that are like related to math, and then especially like what I really like about this video is like there's pretty strong connections to a lot of the things that we are ultimately deriving, and even kind of goes back to a little bit of the eliminativist or not. Like there's a little bit of overlap even in that sense. So yeah, feel free to put any cool things there, basically.
Yeah, we talked about category theory a couple weeks ago. We had a bit on that. Yeah, so that's, I don't know if we want to follow up on that in this channel. Would be a good place. And I'm glad to see Erin is back posting in the Slack. So hope she's doing well.
Oh, and just to reiterate for new people or whatever, many of our lab members are not in this meeting today, and Saturdays just don't work for them. So Erin's still in the lab, Anusha's still in the lab. Other people are here but not here. And Erin is, a very brief note on Erin. I think she's inspired by. I think she could potentially be going down an interesting path of like development, like not software development, but development in a sense of pursuing some ethical projects in terms of kind of philanthropy-based stuff. So we'll see updates from her in the future as she's going through her job transition and things like that. But Erin's a very interesting person, and good to see her interacting with us however she can, and there will be more from her in the future. So I'll leave it at that. But
yeah, good.
Shout out to Erin, basically.
Yeah. Okay, let me go back to the Slack here. So that's that. And then I think Random had some things in it. Random channels is kind of random discussion.
Angela, by the way.
What? Sorry?
You mentioned your person, Jen Todoro.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So,
I can introduce you all later through email.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Actually, I emailed her. I just gave her a little message, but if you want to facilitate that along, that would be great. I don't know what her actual, what she wants to do. But you said that this is coming up. This is Sapient, your publication that you're working with, and she's publishing this thing in the new edition. So sometimes, yeah, if you if you maybe facilitate some interaction there, it would be great. But sometimes people don't just respond to someone, contacting them about it. But
Yeah. I can do that.
okay.
Sure, that's cool. Thank you for bringing that up. It's always good to kind of see connections, come up, and projects come up out of thin air sometimes. So it's always good to just share that.
And then this other, Angela had a great talk with Robin Hanson, who likes institutional reform, and I should have mentioned old institutes like us. So was that a nice discussion that you had with Robin Hanson, Angela?
Sorry, what did you say?
You had a conversation with Robin Hanson?
Yes, though I forgot to mention orthogonal lab.
Oh,
He
okay.
is interested in institutional reform.
All right. Yeah. That's good.
I think there was something in the I just posted the same link in the CGS, the contextual geometric group
Okay.
on Slack. That's not really anything, but there were I think that's actually it. I think that's most of the Slack updates because I ordered my stuff by like what's been updated recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't see any updates on that on the left sidebar for me. So yeah.
All right. So, yeah. And then Angela also had a talk with Alex Flint, who is, I think, an AI safety researcher. So, and then, so she's been really busy talking to people. So that's good. Yeah.
I know she's been busy doing a lot of other things too.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But
I'm
that's good.
exhausted.
What was that?
I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Are you Angela? I can't tell if you're joking or not. You know, I hear it.
Half.
That's good. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Even
I think that's it. I think there was another thing that Jesse had mentioned. It was like a open question, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, this is the now presentation.
In the open chat discussion, open forum chat, which is sort of like our open chat forum is like our generics, like say whatever you want here related to stuff. Yeah, I think you can scroll up a lot more. It's there.
Yeah. Well, that's the question down there, but I think this is from the 13th. We had this. Would be cool to talk about this in a weekly segment on the professional development stuff. This is design space exploration, which is a design methodology for electronic and embedded systems. So this is just kind of like sort of like a possibility space, like we've talked about in many other different types of contexts. And this is something that maybe we can adapt. I think I talked about it in the possibility space talk at the event that we had, the trajectories session at CogSci. But yeah, this is an interesting thing, design space exploration. And Jesse said maybe it fits into professional development.
Which thing?
Design space exploration.
Oh, more like I think having maybe not really as I don't think it's quite the match that I was going for, but like I think one thing I'd like to do is have a bit of a segment of like professional development related stuff. But I guess I'll talk about that later.
Okay. Then there was this thing on, this is from the Wall Street Journal. Facebook says its rules apply to all. So this is, This is quite related to, I won't say it inspired my posting about the big tech and ethics internship, but it feels like every few months there's something like this that comes out. And like this is gossip, but this is also like, there's huge, what comes out of things like this are actually, in my opinion, like going to be huge legal governance, society ethics, tech precedence is being set here, because how, like Facebook's basically saying, and I haven't been able to read the full article yet, but Facebook's basically saying very openly that, well, we have different classes of rules that people follow by. We are saying everybody's the same rule in public and in private. Here's actually how it's working differently, and it's just like I feel like that's something to pay attention to. Also, so okay.
We'll come back to that later. I mentioned the impedance grants for longevity research. A lot of people were interested in that before, so
yeah,
check out.
It's,
And then Where's the question that you were looking for?
Yeah, so this is the question Jesse asked. A glass of water has a lot of computing power and just not doing anything intelligent with it. A glass of water has teraflops of computing. It's just being used to compute the trajectory of water molecules. Alternatively, you can interpret the motion of the molecules as doing other computations. Discuss, question mark. And so we encourage questions like this because it's just kind of something that you're wondering about. I think Zura asked a question a couple weeks ago and something else similar. It's a very interesting question. There are a lot of potential answers. And I gave one answer, which is this book. Because this question, I think I've heard about this before, and I don't know where exactly. But this book, was that?
Maybe, I'm trying to remember the exact talk, but this statement was actually from Dan Elton, who's a physicist and AI researcher, and we were both at the Bika event.
Okay.
And then a friend of mine, and he was replying to, I think it was sort of a critique of, I don't know if it was the Schneider model about levels of intelligence, but something similar in that discussion. So it came from the Bacon conference itself, and discussing how different things are doing computationally, basically.
Yeah. I don't think it was from that, though. But this is what I kind of thinking. It may be from this. There's this book by Seth Lloyd, who's at MIT, and this is something called Programming the Universe. And so this is an idea that you can program materials in a way analogous to computers. So they're actually thinking about quantum computers and how all materials or objects have a quantum scale, and you can theoretically program materials, program things in the world, even program the universe according, if you can understand their quantum states and program it like a quantum computer. There's also, the aspect of the glass of water. There are a lot of issues about entropy and leveraging that to, build a computing machine. So, a glass of water has entropy in it over time. And so we can measure that so it's like a statistical mechanics approach to computing. And so these are things that, I don't know if these are possible answers. If you're interested in this question, you could answer it any way you want. So I encourage questions like that, though. I think they're good to think about problems in different ways. And we have a lot of different the people in the lab here have a lot of different life experiences and different ways of thinking about things. So that's why that kind of question is always good to have. So I think we're going to move on here finally from the Slack. And thank you for everyone who participated in the Slack chat.
Thanks for staying with us to there, because that was a lot of fun. This week, a bunch of stuff kind of came out of the woodworks, and really it's more like came to fruition. So that was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so that's a lot. But now I want to move on. Actually, I wanted to move on to the administrative stuff. So Jesse, you had maybe a second pass at the administrative. I want to keep it short though, because we want to.
Yeah. Also, just to reiterate, our meeting can be a bit long. This is hitting an hour mark. So if people have to go, it's okay. And that happens. But yeah, give me 30 seconds, and I could do more with the administrative stuff.
Yeah. Why don't I talk about think about the submissions?
Yeah, sure.
Doing that. So I wanted to go over some submissions things quickly. We have our submissions doc as usual. So for Madhuri, this is the document that we use to track all the things that we're submitting to different venues. So this is from I think last January 1st. So this is a lot of stuff in this period of time. And so we've done a lot of things, have a couple things out. There are a couple things we need to finish up. So the Gibsonian information stuff is, the Bika presentation is done. So that's done, that's green. And then this paper on our EI workshop follow-up to the Artificial Life special issue. This is this paper on developmental Bradenburg vehicles, and this is going to be, I need to send that to them by the 1st of the month. So we have this paper, I don't have it open right now, but we have this paper, it's basically all ready to go. I need to go over it and maybe make some changes, editorial changes a little bit, give it a once over, but that's going to go out soon. And then we're going to, see what happens. This is something that we actually wrote with a number of people who were in the group like 2 years ago, and we have it as a preprint, and we've been looking for a home, and so hopefully this journal is a home for it. We also have this Neuromatch Academy, or actually it's a Neuromatch conference. I shouldn't put Neuromatch Academy here. So the Neuromatch conference, and we all know what that is. That's the virtual conference that there's a Neuromatch Academy and Neuromatch conference. Some of you participated in Neuromatch 3, which was, I think, last November. And Neuromatch 4 is coming up. It's, this is actually the Academy, I'm sorry. So, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So this is the conference here, Neuromatch 4, number 62. And this is the way that we've been waiting for this to come out. It still says Neuromatch 3. But this is Neuromatch 4. And so this is the website. Now, I think the submission date, okay, so it said October 15th. They updated it to October 25th. So we're targeting late October for these abstracts. So what you need to do if you're interested in participating, and this is like I think a 15-minute talk. If what you do is you want to submit an abstract, you want to prepare maybe a 300-word abstract, and then submit it. And I think they accept a lot of different, a variety of different things. I don't think that's going to be a problem. There is a small registration fee that can be waived. It's usually a very good conference. They usually get a lot of big names, so I'm looking forward to this, and hopefully we can maybe submit a couple things to this like we did last time. This is let me update this, and so we're going to be talking about this in coming meetings, and hopefully if you have ideas, we want to submit, we should work on them now, get the abstract in shape, and then add it to the list of things we want to submit. And so then you have to produce a presentation, but that's we just want to be on top of that process. So that's all for the submissions. I think that's enough. If you have things you want to submit to, if they're like conferences or workshops, please put them on the list or tell me and I can put them on the list.
Could you say again what was the first one? The EI workshop, was that the which one was the first one you?
So the follow-up was for the Artificial Life Journal special issue. So this is yeah. So we did for their ebook. We submitted one for their ebook. And yeah. So this is the second one, and we're going to try that one too.
And when was that due?
That is due the 1st of the month of October. So we've got like 2 weeks or something for that.
Okay, I'm slowly putting together. I can actually show this. We're doing like the admin stuff now, so
yeah.
I will share my screen. Yeah. Let me hold on a second. Let me get this. Let me switch. Oh, this will be okay. Yeah, I'll put it like this. All right. Okay. Was someone saying something, or was that just my feedback?
Just an echo.
Okay. All right. So I think this last. Where did you go? Oh, okay. So let's go. We kind of covered this, but just to go a little bit more, spend a little bit more time. For many of us, when we came to understand the lab, this was what we. This is the main homepage of the lab. This is the weekly site, and part of the reason these are on these different sites is because of being open source and trying to make things as accessible as possible, and doing things in maybe some new and different ways. So there's reasons why things are this way, but this is still a functional website, and just to kind of, Bradley could actually go through this better than I could, but there's some ways of grouping stuff with people collaborations. I have to put reconstructing cybernetics on the new page. I actually forgot about that one. The ethics team, data reuse people get involved. These are still here, but kind of what I wanted to do, and I might even go through just to show people how to do this if they want to. Reconstructing cybernetics. Oh, this is the GitHub repo itself. Okay. We have many different projects and sub-projects, including like, not sub-projects, but like just a lot of different things. Where was the Devo worm one? Is that in?
That's under simulating biology, people collaboration.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. So, what I kind of wanted to do, and I spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks doing this, so it's still being refined. But I basically created this GitHub webpage, and spoiler, I'm using a very similar theme to my own because I'm familiar with it and it works pretty well. But I basically made this page. Like this is, I don't know if anybody really has seen this outside of Bradley and me until today or this week, really. So this is sort of an unveiling of this page. But this is an incomplete list of the news. So if anybody has any lab news or like has publications they want to talk about, let us know. We can put it on here. I did mention like, Krishna being a TA, and some other research stuff, but this isn't quite the most, this isn't the most updated, but I'm trying to, just give a sense of what's happening in that sense. And obviously our new positions here, I'm trying to, I don't want to formalize things too much because they're sort of like, we're sort of non-traditional in how we go about things here. But I think having some, hey, here's what you would do at the internship. Here's the project. Here's some past stuff is good. And there's even a little bit more that I want to do in the sense of creating a little bit more structure so people can know what the different projects are, like what has been happening in them, but that will take a little bit more time. But again, to kind of go to this, again, like on the left side, we have many disparate project sites that overlap. Like this is the classic representational brains and phenotype. This is kind of has been the main thrust of the lab for a while. So if people are new to the lab, it'd be good to check this out just to see what's been done here. I remember writing out many times empirical and artificial models of neurobehavioral complexity, as like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing in your lab? Well, actually, I'm studying empirical and artificial models of neurobehavioral complexity. How about that? And just that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of things that have been happening over here, and different like a throwback to the Google. We work. This is part of our Google Summer of Code stuff, and creating some simulations. Develop. What's that?
Under EDU, I think is the.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And you can see Sam Felder the first person in the Google Summer of Code deal.
Yeah, him and Jim.
Oh, Jim. Okay. Yeah, these were interesting because they were a lot of contextual, like CGS stuff, and this is a little bit of a throwback to knowledge representation and some of the things about that. But there's quite a history here, and it's still in the representation brain and phenotype stuff. And then more recently we had Stefan and our work with like the broadband brain stuff and developmental brain vehicles, and there's still like I'm still I still want to have. I didn't flesh out the description yet, but even here in our, I kind of moved that under a meta brain model, but I don't know how you want that one to be arranged, Bradley. But um, I do have a specific pub posting to do for like basically developmental brain root vehicles. There's nothing on this page yet,
Yeah.
but just like I think that'll be. There's definitely something that someone wants to work on fleshing out any of those models, and we had Ankit and Z and Stefan. Like there's work to be followed up on, and I know we actually worked. Stefan was at the international workshop on embodied intelligence with us. I don't know if he's done anything since with his Raja brain stuff, but I know he was sort of interested in it.
Yeah, I don't think he hasn't done very much with it since then. It's just like, we're going to do this paper and we'll see. But yeah, it's actually, we're trying to figure out how to make that into like a sustaining open source project, like, on its own where people are contributing. But I haven't done anything. He hasn't done anything on it. So as for the updates for like MetaBrains, this is continually evolving. So it's like we always have to play catch up on this stuff. And, I don't know, I kind of feel like it's overwhelming to some extent. That's why I want to make this a little bit more simplified, or at least from what we were doing before. So this is good that we're doing this kind of thinking in these meta-organizational terms, so we can keep everything kind of, straight and where it's fitting in and where maybe the connections are.
And part of that's because, like, there's stuff that could be happening on all these fronts, and a lot of it right now is just because the main focus the main focus of the lab shifts on like certain publication deadlines or other things. There's a lot of different what we talk about isn't always the full breadth of what's going on and what has been going on, what could be going on. Like there's still a lot in terms of the critical period stuff. We still have a Discord about that, and Anusha, I think, is still interested in those things too. So there's a lot going on. But anyway, to go back to kind of the overview of things, that was basically a deep dive into one project, one cluster of projects, I suppose. Developmental AI is something that I'm going to continue to build out, and I don't know if we want to make it too separate from the other, like meta brains or representational brains and phenotypes. I think this is currently blank, yeah. But I am there's some structure there that I think is going to be quite useful to have, because we actually have a few like different maps and trajectories and things we're doing, and like ways we're fleshing out this project. This is actually a pretty significant part of the lab, and will probably be more so in the future, in the next sort of several months cycles of things. Cognition Futures is my team that I made. This is not really the best website right now, but just kind of show it quickly. This is all for our big event with CogSci 2021. Working with state-of-the-art AI and so on. This all needs to be updated. And I think that's become like, there's sort of a rite of passage when you like have your first set of websites that are academic based and then become outdated. And it's sort of this weird, like, yeah, it's happening, but it's part of it. The ethics team, shout out to the ethics team. Summer Co we did, OpenWorm is the other group, Data Reuse Initiative, I think lots happening with that right now. But this I kind of wanted to make a bit more a simple site map where everything's kind of over here in the nav, and there's still things to be added to this. Okay. But let me know if you have any suggestions for this too. This is open to discussion. But to go on to specifically this is all new stuff. I've kind of created some boilerplate basic labeling for things. But if anybody ever asks, yes, we accept international students. I think most of our remaining things are not, like a lot of the internships that I mentioned are not paid internships. So if people ask you, hey, I heard about Orthogonal Lab, you can say, yes, we're totally open to international students. We always have been, and as far as I can tell, we pretty much always will be, as Bradly sees fit. But that's been, like, ever since I've been in the lab, I've almost been in the minority as an American person. There's more people in Europe or in India or not here in where I am, and that's great. So that should always be on the table. And we are a remote lab, so I'm going on that here, but just I try to put anything really essential here and then repeat the iterations and the specific groupings of them. But yeah, so just to kind of really quickly, I don't want to take too much time here. We went over two of them already, but I've broken them down, I don't know, alphabetically by group right now. So there's cognition futures. These are specific project-based internships. We have administrative one, which is, we have progress on that front. And as far as these advanced opportunities, these are, I don't know, I'll let Bradley talk about the model builder one, but for the general one, this is kind of just the main internship option. Like this is, if you want to lead a project or you just want to join the lab and maybe make some headway in a different area, this is basically just, we welcome you to come here and build something out, because there's a lot of things going on, but this is one is sort of like the most generic, the most general, but also maybe the most. Well, this one I think there's sort of a, and none of these are really hard and fast rules about these things, but like this specific research assistant general internship is about if you have research experience and you want to lead something or have a particular vision of where you want things to go with research, you can do that, and kind of breaking it down. Like there's technical and non-technical aspects to these things. Like you don't have to be a programmer, but you can be. And pretty basic stuff here. So that's kind of that one. And I don't know if you want to say anything about the model builder position.
Well, yeah, I'll just say that like model builder is something, if you're interested in attending the meetings and then thinking about like, how would I build a model of something we talked about in the lab? Like we talk about a lot of ideas and we throw them around and sometimes they're not very well formed. But if you could think of, and this just allows you to build this skill, which is to take an idea that's maybe not so tightly formed and then, sort of put it in a formalization. And we call that a model. I mean, we talk about machine learning models, we talk about like computational models, but really the skill is just formalizing some idea, saying this is how I'm going to represent it using words, math, numbers, symbols, whatever it is. You could even build a little model house. It sounds silly, but we actually did this in one of my classes when I was learning modeling. Is you build like these metaphorical structures, like you could build a house or you could build like a car that would represent a problem. So model building is like just taking a problem, formalizing it as something, some representation, and then it has some usefulness. Maybe it doesn't have any usefulness, but it's just a way to like understand the problem better. And so in this position, I'm looking for people who would like just think about problems, formalize them, but then also maybe work with models like, reinforcement learning, agent-based modeling. You can learn new methods. This allows you to learn new methods as you need to and work with them. So if someone's interested in just really understanding, a lot of different types of models and just wants to really get into it with some problems that maybe aren't that cut and dry, this would be something for you. And again, this is just like any other position. It's just kind of, we're not paying people right off the bat, but you're going to maybe find some opportunities in the future to be paid. We accept people from all over the world. It's remote, so you can work at your own pace. you don't have to, like, if you want to take time off or something, since you're not being paid, it's like, okay, I can do that. Or I can work, we have our one meeting on Saturdays, but we have remote activities all throughout the week. So, and this is a good opportunity, but also I think the flexibility of the lab is another opportunity to learn these skills without being sort of overwhelmed by them. Now, for Madhuri's benefit, I wanted to know kind of more about, I don't know, she probably maybe doesn't know how she wants to fit into the lab. Maybe she does. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah. Um,
We can hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for all the introduction, and yeah, I've been listening to it the whole while. Yeah, I did understand that it was not a paid position, and so I was wondering, what do you think would be opportunities where we could, source for funding? Yeah, and the reason I was interested in this is because there's more than I did take a look at the website and different projects, tapeworm, cognition, brain organoids, and the cognition future, etc. And I immediately felt like I was wondering if it was possible for me to distribute my time across all these projects, but since that wouldn't be practically possible, um, yeah, I understand that it comes with a certain flexibility of, like you mentioned, of working remote, and I think I see this as a learning experience. Because from the background I've not had much exposure to systems, neuroscience, or um, um, any of these, and I've had very little coding experience from Neuromatch. And again, Neuromatch was not. I didn't. The idea was not to become proficient in coding, but to sort of learn how what do we consider before we'd like to visualize an idea, or we'd like to build a model on something. um, and yeah, again, like I was just curious to know, what would you think would be some funding opportunities we could consider in the future?
Well, there are all sorts of different things. Like some of them, they're small grants that we have tried for in the past, where we've tried to get, for like foundations that give money for different types of, projects. A lot of our projects are, there are different stages of development. So there are different ways that people can, like, we can sell the project to get small funding. We haven't really tried for any of the large funding opportunities, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't. There are opportunities for collaborations with other groups too, so that's somewhere where we could do like a bigger funding opportunity. Jesse actually just received a fellowship, so this is something that he's worked on. He started on the lab and he's worked on some things, and it sort of culminated in this opportunity for him to get a fellowship. So applying to fellowships, but having like this as your background and your sort of your means of doing things is good too. So that there are all sorts of opportunities to but this gives you sort of a grounding, and it gives you more experience in research. It gives you a broad set of topics to attach to and learn about, and then maybe if there's a funding opportunity, we can go for it and do that. So we funded like Google Summer Code students, and these are all things you can just apply for if the opportunity comes up, but then you at least have some like proposal that you can you have some proposal with some backing that you can do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the lab's interesting in the sense of, I think more so than most labs that I've been a part of, there's a lot of, it's almost like, it's a little bit of a flipped classroom vibe. And what I mean by that is not so much that like you're on your own in terms of learning, because I think there's actually quite a bit of support about that, but more like the what oral offers that's somewhat unique is a lot of experience to find what works for you and flesh it out. Like the fellowship that I got is kind of a result of a few years of having some specific project focus, where I built out some different things, some of it with the existing technology stuff, and some of it with other things, or just getting more and more experience here in the lab, and having ways that we can show off what you're doing in the context of an academic or sort of para-academic environment. And there's a lot of like Google Summer of Code. We have experience with applying to different fellowships and finding opportunities. So that's sort of like a whole. That's sort of a whole. That could be like a whole section, not necessarily of the weekly meetings, but okay, Krishna, it's good to hear from you.
Thanks for attending, Krishna. Yeah.
Yeah, take care. That's like a whole discussion to have about like how do you as in an open science and open source situation get funding for projects that you want to do, because that's sort of like what it's really about in a research sense anyways. How do you, or just like writing grant proposals. I have some experience with that. A lot of another way to say things too is like what oral kind of affords you is a chance to get experience that you might not otherwise get, and that can turn into a lot of really good formalizations of stuff later. So that's a discussion to have on many fronts. And as far as like Madhuri mentioned, a lot of the projects, I think it's sort of like when you come, it's very tough, and I've onboarded a few people to the labs, over the last year or so. There's absolutely not an expectation that you work on every project here. I think that'd be definitely impossible. So it's more like finding what would you like to do, and I don't know if you joined specifically with intention, with wanting to get like a more administrative experience, because that's definitely something that's available. Because I'm as I kind of showed on I'll just be on camera, I guess. As I kind of showed on the website itself, it's like, hold on a second. As I showed on the website itself, there's a lot going on. A lot to be organized about things. Oops, hold on. Almost closed everything. All right. Let's do this. It's sort of like, I guess the trick when you're first coming to the lab is thinking, what specific things would you like to focus on in terms of either skills that you'd like to develop or interests that you'd like to get more involved in. And I don't know what you've discussed with Bradly, but like I certainly don't have any expectations that you can just say, hey, I want to do this right now, because you're kind of getting a sense of these things. But I would say for you or anyone that is new to the lab or considering this or seeing this, let us know what either specific skills you'd like to further develop, or if there are any projects or project areas that you're interested in, and we can work with you to develop kind of a plan for research, or sort of start helping you get on board with the existing. Like we have a bunch of documents in the works, we have presentations in the works, we have a lot of things we're developing, and a lot of it's kind of just getting new people up to speed and finding what they want to do. A lot of the job postings, and a lot of these specific ones, as I was kind of saying before, is like these are really targeted things to do within these macro projects. And for people who are just getting, it's kind of, there's sort of a learning curve in general. So like, hey, what is actually going on in the lab? Like you might have seen some of our publications. We probably actually should put, that's what I should put here is actually some publications that we've had, because that would help people just to put that in one centralized location. But some publications and presentations we've been making about these different areas. So it's sort of like, it's this bridging gap between like an outsider is like, oh, you're doing a lot of cool stuff, that's great, I could get some good experience here, work with you on this project, to, hey, I know what actually is going on in the Cognition Futures team, and I'm working on this we're working on this next presentation for the next conference. So it's sort of like that's just sort of that bridging the gap, and it's always a work in progress in that sense. So if you have any specific questions along those lines, you know, let us know. We can also meet, like, you have to do that live in the meeting right now. But like you know, talk to us on Slack or emails or anything like that, and we can like go from there.
Yeah, I think I was initially I was under the impression that some of these roles that look at perhaps, I don't know, addressing a particular question in a project would be coding intensive, and since that is not something that I mean, coding has always been something that I was intimidated by until I recently was at Neuromatch. And like you said, I think I would like to have, I think what I'm trying to go for is a nice balance between administrative or communicating what the lab does versus learning and working on a specific question that I could develop over time. I just yeah, like a couple of days back, I started to look at the open data sets available under DevoWorm, and yeah, I think I should be on the same page in a couple of weeks when we're going over the Slack updates. And yeah, I think, like you said, the goal would be to see if I can work on a project, see how I progress while I do some background learning and all that. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, there's definitely ways you can do, like, it's especially, like, I never particularly wanted it to be like, oh, we have to get someone specifically for, you know, I don't want to silo people. Like, we have a lab manager that only does administrative work or something like that. Like, I'm still lab manager doing lab manager stuff. But like, for people who want to, it's not, you know, if you want to get experience in that situation, I'm happy to. I can go if that's an area you want to go into. Bradley and I can definitely have as much as you want to go into that stuff as you can, but also, like, it's not mandatory. But like, if you do want to be part of, we are looking for someone to do some more administrative stuff. So like, it's sort of like, how much of that do you want to get into? Do you want to take over? Do you want to commit to a responsibility for like posting like on Medium or like lab logs or lab updates? That's like kind of that level. Like, it's basically kind of like what do you want to do in that sense? So that's the administrative side of things. But then, yeah, like finding your way on specific projects. And again, like, it's totally overwhelming to just like, hey, here's like 10 projects, and some of them have worked on this year. Some of them are going to be worked on next year.
Right.
Some of them we're publishing a final copy. Some of it's a first draft. So it's like
Yeah.
don't feel too overwhelmed or uncomfortable about that. Like just talk to us. We can even make like a specific like group chat in Slack if you want to have like a group, or talk after the meeting about what you want to do specifically. So like I'm not trying to put a lot of pressure on you and this won't decide anything. So don't feel that. But it's kind of trying to give a big lay of the land, I guess.
Definitely not the hard sell, because I mean, I want to make sure that you find something you're comfortable with and that you can grow with.
Yeah.
So if you want to just, look at what we have and kind of, even if you pick something and you find it not to be to your liking and then you do something else, that's fine. We just want to make sure that you can do something, you find some momentum in your career. And so that's the important thing.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Oh yeah, nothing. I was just saying that I will read over things and get back to you if I have something specific in mind, or perhaps if you'd like to, if you prefer me to start with something, then I could do that too.
Maybe we could start
Okay.
with a small administrative, maybe we could do some administrative things, or Jesse, if you want to, kind of mention things that would be.
I would suggest we can have let's pick a point. Either, I don't know if you prefer Slack, or if you really like GISTI meetings with live like this, or want to talk on some other platform or emails. Like, we mostly talk in the Slack, but like for more intense onboarding, like more live messaging might be better. So let me know if you prefer communication. I can do an administrative like tour and just kind of say, here's the set of things you could potentially want to take responsibility for. And then I would say for you, I would also suggest find one of the general topics in the lab. It can be the diva worm stuff, it can be meta brain stuff, it can be like pick a topic, whether it's like neuroscience or the cognitive stuff, or you want to do coding on the old developmental Brainberg models. Like, those are options. Or if you want to work on any of the other like things that you saw that caught your interest, maybe pick one of those things. And it doesn't have to be your final choice. You can change it, but like pick a topical area and say, hey, Jesse or Bradley, I'm kind of interested in the ethics team on maybe like what Krishna said about deep fakes, maybe some like looking at the coding applications of that, or I just want to research some of the other topics that are not as technical in that area, or picking one of those things and just saying, here's an area I'm interested in, and we could get some specific tasks for you in that area, or also just kind of align you with the current publication flow that we have, if that makes sense. So talk to me about administrative stuff, preferred communication means, and then finding a general topical area you want to maybe focus on or take a first dive into, and we can go from there, if that makes sense.
Right. Yep.
Well, thank you for that conversation. So we'll follow up on that on Slack and maybe next week. I wanted to get into papers because we've been.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it on the job stuff.
Yeah.
I would just say if anybody knows anyone who is interested in the lab, or like, hey, they're interested in cognition future stuff or society ethics stuff, or we kind of need to have a little more material to show what we're trying to do with the developmental AI, I think. But like, if you know somebody, or like someone's looking for an internship that's journal related, mostly just send them to the jobs page, but also just have them email Bradley, because Bradley's kind of can distribute a lot of that. So we are recruiting people actively, and if you know people or you come across somebody who asks you about it, just sort of filter it this way, and particularly like towards Bradley's email. And the job postings are kind of like on ramps, but they're not the only thing. They're not the only thing we're doing, and there's a lot of room for individualization. So that's my admin time over. We can finish. I know we got to finish papers and thank you for all the time about that.
Oh yeah, no problem. So let me share my screen. We usually finish up with some papers. So the first thing I want to mention is it's Open Science Week. This week is Open Science Week. I usually don't do too much for it, but I just wanted to make people aware. And there's this acronym that is something that we cover in open when we talk about open data, and the INCF, which is the organization that usually sponsors Google Summer of Code. They have a lot of nice resources, and I don't know if I have some of those. Actually, I have one here where they have a lot of nice community activities. So they have this how to provide a feedback for call for community reviews. So they have a lot of community, open source community stuff that they do. And this might be a model even for us, where they're like creating documents and then there's a call for review. It's like for best practices and different things in neuroscience. And so they do this open iteration, these docs that give best practices. But in any case, this is the INCF. This is what they're doing with that. But I wanted to talk about this open data and specifically the FAIR acronym. So if you get into open data, if you know what that is, it's basically where you take a data set and you make it open for a number of groups to reuse. And you can think of there are a lot of repositories from like systems biology to genetic sequences to brain data even, where they have open repositories. And there's been a movement in the past decade or so to create this FAIR standard. And so these are community standards for open data. So FAIR refers to making data that's findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And if you think about like an informal data analysis, a lot of times people will throw stuff in a spreadsheet, or they'll throw stuff in a CSV file, and it'll just be like these numbers with some cryptic descriptions of the variables. And that's not really what we want if we want to share data. So one of these ideals are kind of ways that people have thought of, well, how do we make this as easy as possible for people to reuse data, to take a data set that I've collected data, I give it to the general public, and then people can investigate different questions using this data set. So one of the things is findable. So you have to be able to find the data set. And usually it's attached like in the methods of a paper, but it could be put into a repository. In DevoWorm, we do things like put it on the web, we put it on GitHub, or make releases of the data. So it's findable for people. It's also accessible. So you want to make sure that it's in good file formats, like, something like a CSV format where people can access it using Python or using, Excel or any of these other platforms that people use to analyze data. But also making sure that variable names are clear. And sometimes even people use like glossaries where they'll have like variable names and then they'll have like a short document where it describes what the variables are. I think we've worked through this for some of the data sets that are available through NeuroMatch. So I think we were working with one of the data sets last summer where we went through the glossary, and they would describe each variable in the notebook that they gave us. So each variable had like a name, but it also had a description. Interoperable means that you can open the data file on any platform. You don't need to have special proprietary software. You can open it up anywhere, and that the data is not in a special format, but also something that's fairly accessible. You don't need to do a lot of transformation. A lot of the neuro imaging data is notorious for this, where you have it in a certain format and then it's locked in. You can't really just open it up and just use it without knowing a lot about that format. So that's interoperable. and then reusable. So the data should be reusable. We have a group, data reuse initiative, which is kind of focused on that idea of reusable data, where you're creating a data set from a data set, or you're opening up a data set and people are able to use it to answer different questions. And, it just has that maximal sort of utility. And so those are ideals that we want to address in FAIR. And so that's Open Science Week. I'm just trying to think of what we can do very quickly without getting too much into this. I think I'll talk about this paper here. Okay. So this is a paper on homeostatic reinforcement learning for integrating reward collection and physiological stability. And this is a paper in eLife. So this is actually a pretty physiological paper, but this relates, I think, to like sort of reinforcement learning and other things that are computational in nature. So the abstract reads, efficient regulation of internal homeostasis, which we've talked about before with respect to the conference, and defending it against perturbations, which are disturbances, requires adaptive behavioral strategies. However, the computational principles mediating the interaction between homeostatic and associative learning processes remain undefined. So homeostatic learning is where you learn how to sort of regulate your state. And so this is a sort of almost like an autonomic, or like something where you would learn your sort of physiological learning more, whereas associative learning is where you're learning to unite different things, like different concepts or different stimuli, and bringing them in association. So there's this link between the two, and it remains undefined. Here we use a definition of primary rewards, and that's as outcomes fulfilling physiological needs, to build a normative theory showing how learning motivated behaviors may be modulated by internal states. So we talk about internal states, which could be in physiological terms. It could be like your state of like excitation. It could be your state of arousal. These are different than cognitive states, but we don't really know the connection between the two. There are interesting connections between cognitive states and physiological states. Like, for example, your emotions control your level of arousal or surprise or things like that. So this is an area I think that's worth thinking about, those connections, especially with respect to reinforcement learning and other computational models. Within this framework, we mathematically prove that seeking rewards is equivalent to the fundamental objective of physiological stability, defining the notion of physiological rationality of behavior. So now they're making a statement here about like sort of a rational decision maker almost, but a physiological version of that. We further suggest that a formal basis for temporal discounting, which is a technical term in reinforcement learning where they look at the time series of the rewards, and there's like this weighting of the rewards over time. This shows that discounting motivates animals to follow the shortest path in the space of physiological variables. So it's like that possibility space, it's taking the shortest path across that towards the desired set point. We also explain how animals learn to act predictively to preclude prospective homeostatic challenges. That's where you have a disturbance that challenges your state. So if your arousal is at a set point, or your body temperature is at a set point. Actually body temperature is a better example. And you go out in the sun and you get hot. You start, maybe you run around a little bit. You get really hot. Your set point is, you deviate from that set point. Now the question is, do you return to that set point, or do you not rise to that challenge in your set point and you end up with a fever or something? This is the whole, there's this whole literature in homeostasis we're not going to get into now, but just to say that this is something that, it's sort of one of these things where it's still maybe kind of a mystery how we maintain our set point, but we do, and that's why they do studies like this. Finally, we suggest a computational role for the interaction between the hypothalamus and the brain reward system, which is dopaminergic. And so these are things in the brain, in the mammalian brain, where you have this communication between two brain systems, and it's, setting up this kind of model of reinforcement learning. So there's some really interesting stuff in this. They talk about internal state. They talk about physiological sort of they have Sutton and Bartow cited in here. So this is like, they have, I think this is Sterling. This is Peter Sterling, who actually wrote a book on allostasis, or this is an article on allostasis. So they're drawing both from the literature on physiology and physiological systems, and then also like reinforcement learning, Sutton and Bartow. We'd mentioned that Rich Sutton actually started out in psychology. So this is, this is a artificial intelligence method that has very strong ties to psychology and physiology. There's some interesting citations in here, a lot of stuff on like sort of motivation and addiction and reinforcement physiological learning and things like that. So like the eating paradox, pharmacological characterization of high-fat feeding induced by opioid stimulation. So there are a lot of things going on physiologically that are interesting from this perspective. So this is something that I know a number of people in the group are interested in, and we should follow up on this. I don't give a lot of detail in these papers. I just pull them out so that people can maybe follow along and read the papers through more thoroughly if they're interested. So this is a nice paper for kind of a theory-based paper, but also something we might follow up on even in the meeting another time. There is this paper, the development of representation in young children, and this is an older paper I found this week where it's a developmental psychology, but it kind of goes into this idea of representations in young children. And we talked about this in our MetaBrain models paper, where we just talked a little bit about development, and we didn't get too much into the development of representations. But this actually goes into a number of studies where they look at different representations that children are building as they develop. And this is an older paper, but I think it's a nice overview of this. And maybe we can look into this a little bit more and follow up and see where it's been cited. So that's all very, that's something to follow up on as well. And then finally, I wanted to talk about this paper here. This one here, I think. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about this. So this is a paper from Nature Communications. This is a generative network model of neurodevelopmental diversity and structural brain organization. So this paper talks about brain networks, which are networks of neurons in the brain. We know that neurons exist as networks, but this is actually a method where we characterize brains as networks. It's kind of interesting that fMRI is sort of the early days of fMRI focused on like looking at different brain regions and how they light up, or they're sort of the relationship between a task and the areas that are active during this task. And of course that's interesting to know sort of like where things are in the brain, and there's a whole history of that. But there's this other method called brain networks, which is where you want to look at like what are the network of areas that are activated during a task, but also how are they regulated? How does information pass from one center of the brain to another? Is everything in one area of the brain, or is it distributed across the brain? And these sorts of things. So the formation of these large-scale brain networks, which are, when you pay attention to something, the entire, not just, certain anatomical regions, but there are a lot of different areas implicated in the brain that are active. So the refinement of these large-scale brain networks represent crucial developmental processes that can drive individual differences in cognition and are associated with multiple neurodevelopmental conditions. So these brain networks, characterizing brain networks in this way, allow us to look at individual differences over like development and in the adult. When we've talked about neurodiversity, which is of course individual differences in a different, looking at it a slightly different way, but it's basically the same thing, and associated with neurodevelopmental conditions such as disease states or other types of variation. But how does this organization arise, and what mechanisms drive diversity in organization? So what they do here is they use a generative network modeling approach, which means they take some data, they kind of figure out what the network should look like, and then they use an algorithm to generate possibilities. So you can generate a number of different possible topologies using some training data, and it gives you a number of answers, and you sort through those possibilities to find maybe the thing that has the highest fitness according to some fitness function, or the highest energy according to some energy function. You just basically rank your possible brain states and you sort through that space. And that's how generative network model works, basically. Generative models are very much different from, say, like a predictive model or like a standard statistical model, because it gives you this set of possibilities that maybe you don't observe directly, but you can sort of infer and then evaluate. And so with this macroscopic framework for brain organization, we've defined that this is an emergent property of a generative wiring equation that optimizes its connectivity by renegotiating its biological costs and topological values continuously. What that means is that basically this brain network reorganizes based on sort of what's going on in the brain. What are there energetic costs to having one type of wiring over another, or one pattern of wiring over another? And that's basically what they're saying, is that maybe certain areas of the brain are active or connected to one another because it's energetically cheaper, or that there's some value to it topologically. Maybe they're closer together. And so the rules that govern these iterative wiring properties are controlled by a set of tightly framed parameters, with subtle differences in these parameters steering network growth towards different neurodiverse outcomes. So neurodiversity. Regional expression of genes converge on biological processes and cellular components involved in synaptic signaling, neuronal projection, catabolysis, and protein transport. Together, this provides a unifying computational framework for conceptualizing the mechanisms and diversity in neurodevelopment. So this allows us to integrate things from genes to cognition. So this is a very ambitious paper. They basically go through this wiring equation. So this is the wiring probability that by trading off the costs of a connection forming against the value of the connection being formed. And so they use this as the basis for their generative model. They generate a bunch of alternatives, and then they evaluate them, both in terms of this equation and in terms of maybe like biological plausibility. Does it look like it could be a good fit? And then you can just basically, you don't need to sample, 100,000 people. You can sample a smaller group, train your model with these data, and then say something useful about like what, alternate patterns of connectivity should be. So that's a really nice paper. I think it fits in with the other two, and I will leave those to people to read over. I'll put them in the Slack channel with the follow-up from the talk or from the meeting. And hopefully, if anyone had any comments about that, you can make them now or in the Slack.
That's good papers. And you put those in the, just put them in the Slack, the folder like usual.
Yeah.
Because I want to follow up on one in particular, but no other comments.
All right, that's fine. Madhuri, did you have any questions or comments?
No comments.
Okay. Well, yeah,
Okay.
so I'll make those available. And so we usually cover a number of papers, and it's like sometimes they get overwhelming just going over them really quickly. But if people are interested in following up on a discussion in another meeting, that's always a possibility. Just a more general discussion of the sort of the themes that we talked about. So, well, thank you for attending, and I just want to just let you know that we're active during the week. So if you want to bring up something, you can bring it up in the Slack, you can bring it up in email, or whatever, and we can follow up on it the next week.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for attending.
Yeah, welcome aboard. Slack's our main hub for stuff, so feel free to tag me or Bradley is anything there. And I don't know, like, are you comfortable using Slack, Madhuri, or would you prefer
Yeah.
emails or? Okay.
For some things, for short announcements, I think Slack is okay. But are you okay with email if I have something something more substantial to discuss?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Because let me know. I think I also know you on Twitter, so I just want you to have the means to communicate me, or like if you want to set up time to go over administrative stuff, let me know when you'd want to do that.